Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Thank you for joining episode 6 of Knowledge That Kills. Tonight, we have a very special guest. He goes by the name of Rick Carson. He is going to be joining us live from Omaha, Nebraska. He is the founder of Make Believe Studios, a badass studio up there. He also is Grammy nominated for mixing and mastering work he's done. He's worked with a lot of Grammy award-winning, multi-platinum artists, producers, and engineers. He's gonna be joining us here any second. And Rick, if you're ready, we're gonna hop on here, buddy. Need everybody to give a round of applause. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bam, 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 bam. Everybody, welcome Rick Carson.
How's it going, everybody? Thanks for having me, Killshot.
What's up, Rick? How you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Man, I'm doing awesome. Happy to have you on the stream tonight, appreciate everybody in the audience for joining. Wanted to first start off with saying thank you for coming. We're so happy to have you, Rick. Me and you are friends. We talk pretty often. I know you got all the mix sauce to give us tonight, but to get us started, could you maybe introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what got you into music or maybe engineering?
Well, I think like a lot of other people, I started as a, artist in a band. I grew up in Detroit and I played with my friends and we played punk rock music and I liked doing that. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to go and make a record. And it kind of started before then, with the actual process of being in a band. I always say that I started mixing before I knew what the term mixing was, because I was the person in my band who went and acquired, by the time my band was done, I owned both amplifiers, both guitar amplifiers, the snare drum, and I definitely was influential over what bass and bass rig our bass player was playing. So, I mixed my band by the equipment and the sounds that we were getting live. And then from there, I was like, okay, let's go into the studio and let's make a record. And when I got into the studio for the first time, that's when I saw Pro Tools and the whole experience. And I left that experience saying, okay, I would much rather be the guy that everybody saves up all of their money all year to go give that guy their money than the guy that is saving up his money to give it away, And that really put me on a path of starting to make records, and I was recording before then, but it was very, very non-professionally. When we went and made our first record in Southfield, Michigan, that was at the same. By the time we made that record, it was actually our second record where I saw Pro Tools for the first time. The first professional recording that I paid to make was on one of those old large Tascam multi-track recorders where you would record onto the thing and then burn it to a CDR. And at that point when we recorded on the Tascam, in my own personal life, I had a little Mackie Onyx mixer, one of the 4-channel guys, and I would put up mics at our practice and I would take the output of that Onyx mixer left and right on RCA and plug that into a VCR machine, and I was recording our practices on VCR, just stereo, on VHS cassette. So that was my first recording experience, was trying to capture the band that way. But by the time that I had seen Pro Tools, I had known that DAWs existed, because I had moved on from that and I had actually gotten, a computer that had a sound card in, the little green TRS 1/8" jack. And I would use that I'd take the output of my sound, Sony, or the output of my Mackie Onyx, and it would go into that sound card mixer. And then that would go to Sony Vegas. And that's how I initially recorded the projects that I was working on for my band and making little loops and stuff. And then from there, when I saw Pro Tools, I was like, I literally remember telling the guy, oh shit, I remember him looking at me, and we showed up to the studio and I was expecting an SSL and a tape machine, and it was the Pro Tools. He actually had a Digi 001, and it was just a room with Pro Tools in it and some guitar amplifiers. And I remember him saying the thing that like changed my life was he looked at me and he said, "This is the industry standard. If Mariah Carey were to be making a record right now, she'd be making it in this exact same software." And I was like, "No shit." And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh well, I can definitely do this better than you're doing it. Watch out." It was just game on from there. So yeah, that's where it all started, I guess.
Okay, so you have to take me back. How old are you when you're recording VHSs on your band's practices? Like,
Okay, so like the first trying to record something to a VHS, you know, I was shoving shit that had VHS or RCA outs into VHSs way back in the day. So like, just trying to take a Technics 1200 that I find in the garage or some random record player and then just plug the RCA cable straight into the front of the VCR and make terrible sounding recordings. I was trying to do that from like age 8 on up. But when I was actually recording my band with intention, that was between the ages of 14 and 15 on VHS. And then I moved to Sony Vegas in the area of 15 to 16. And by 16 years old, I was enrolled and at Full Sail.
okay. Now you've led me to my next question. 16 years old, Full Sail University. I hear you're the youngest person to attend Full Sail, or at least at the time you were.
At the time, I've heard that there have been younger, but I think it was one of those things where, like, I heard a 14-year-old went, but I think his like parents also went to the school. Where I think my experience was different. I went to Full Sail when I was 16, and I lived on my own. I had roommates. It was a typical college experience, except for I couldn't go to the bar. And it was weird because the weird thing about it is like the first week at Full Sail, I had a completely different group of friends than the people who did end up being my friends, because like we all hung out and everything was cool. And then they all learned I was 16, and they're like, "Oh, we're not going to spend college being the guy who hang out with a 16-year-old." You know what I mean? And they like told me, they're like they were straight up about it. And it was weird because then like I went and made other friends, and then I'm a petty motherfucker, so like I didn't fuck with those kids anymore. So then I became like friends with everybody at Full Sail. I knew like everyone, and then I just didn't fuck with those kids. So it was an interesting experience. I got a lot out of it. I would always say that I've been a go-getter when it comes to you know learning and taking advantage of the things that have been at my disposal. So I I'll never forget it. I have a letter of recommendation, and I got one from the majority of my teachers when I was at Full Sail. I thought that was the thing to do, was like go and like collect these letters of recommendation for trying to get a job when I fucking left. But my favorite one was from my Pro Tools instructor, a guy named John, who I've actually stayed in touch with. And when I got the letter back, like you could tell like through it being folded that it was only like one line, and I was like all super disappointed, and I didn't want to read it in front of him. I was like hoping for like this glowing fucking letter of recommendation from this guy, and then I get this thing and I open it up, and when I open it up, it says, "When I was supposed to be teaching Rick Carson Pro Tools, Rick Carson taught me Pro Tools," and then he signed it, and that was it. So yeah, I've always just tried to learn what I can learn and be interested in what I'm interested in. And thankfully it's nerdy audio shit. So if you guys have any questions, let me know.
That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, that's amazing, man. Um, so take us. You're graduating Full Sail. What's like the first project that you remember that you're excited to work on, whether it's big or small?
Okay, so when I graduated Full Sail, um and this is like graduated Full Sail, so I'm done with my bachelor's degree, because when I was done with my associate's degree, there was like a little 3-month lapse where I thought I was going to be moving to Byron Bay, Australia to attend SAE. And so I went up to Colorado, and I was working with some people out in Colorado on some stuff. And then when I realized that I wasn't going to be going to Byron Bay, I instantly went back to Full Sail. So, there, this is like post Full Sail, post my bachelor's degree. The first session I did was a freelance session, in the Orlando area. And that was like, I got recommended to, it was actually Cool Keith, and he called Full Sail looking for an engineer to do what would eventually be some Dr. Octagon stuff, and I remember getting the call. I had, it was funny because career development never fucked with me. They never helped me out at all. But I had some teachers who were like always on my side. So I remember taking that job. But the one that was like super interesting to me that I was hyped about was I got a phone call to go work on the new Brand New record. And at that point, I know that they've since been Me Too'd, but Brand New was like one of my favorite acts of all time. And they were working with a dude named Dennis down in Oxford, Mississippi. And I got a phone call seeing if I'd be interested to go down to Oxford. And, I said, no, I'm not willing to go down to Oxford. I heard that Brand New's not going to finish their record there. I fucking called around, and they didn't. They did not finish their record there. And what ended up happening is I told a guy named Jeremy Deaton about it, who I was in class with. And Jeremy decided not to go to Oxford, Mississippi as well. He passed it along to his roommate, a guy named John Ursoy. John Ursoy took the gig and went down to Sweet Tea and worked at Dennis Herring's spot. He didn't have a credit that's like, he has some credits with Dennis, but like his most, gnarly credit actually came working with a dude named Ben Allen. They did the Animal Collective's Merriweather Post Pavilion down there during that time. And he was like the assistant on that record. And that came from that time period of being excited about going and doing shit. But to be honest, when I graduated from school, I did not intend to work in music anymore. They drill it into your head. Like the majority of money in recording is in post-production. Absolutely. So when I left Full Sail, I was 100%, into the idea of going and working in the world of post, because who doesn't want to make a living and support themselves and stuff. So when I actually left the Orlando area, I relocated to Prague. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the Czech Republic is actually one of the largest post-production markets outside of America. It's pretty much Toronto and then Prague as far as like post-production markets outside. Well, Vancouver's taken over Toronto now, but either way, Canada, right. Czech Republic, and people who spoke and could edit in English were like, I mean, it's easy as fuck to get a job out there, straight up, and all of the apartments are like furnished and they all look like an IKEA and shit. So, when I actually left Orlando, me and my girl moved out to Prague, and I was there for a couple months, and she was not into it. So she wanted to come back to America. So we came back to Orlando, and I was in Orlando for 1 week before I had interviewed at CRC in Chicago Recording Company. And within 2 weeks of coming back to America, I was living in an apartment that CRC owned in downtown Chicago, and Sherry was moving our stuff up to Chicago to meet me up there. And I worked at CRC for a while and worked on like The Dark Knight and a bunch of other movies. I got to work with Bernie Mac and both of the Cusacks, John and Joan Cusack. I did a lot of work with Jennifer Love Hewitt for like VH1 spots and stuff like that. And, it just came down to it that like I hated my fucking boss. You know, he was an awful human being, and every day I feel like I'm getting a little bit more like Tim Butler. So like I try and like watch out for those things. You know, like I can grow a gnarly beard and like I'm pretty not beardy, but if you would have seen me like 4 days ago, like I look like a fucking hamster man. And whenever that happens, I'm like, oh shit, you're turning into Tim Butler. You got to fucking turn this train around because, he was just an awful person. And I'll never fucking forget it. There's a book. It's called The Prophet. I keep it here with me on the console. I also have another copy over there on the wall. But there's a line in this book where he says, if a baker bakes bread with a distaste in his heart, he bakes a better bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And I read that, and I quit my fucking job the next day, dude. I was like, wow. I did not get into recording for fucking goddamn to label 9 billion fucking copies of Bernie Mac going, whoa, like it just, I was out, dude, and I went back to making records. I got into this to make fucking records, and I've been doing it ever since.
Amazing. I don't even know where to begin, Rick, because I think you just mind fucked me, and from the look of the chat, the whole audience too. But I do have a few questions relating some specific projects. Maybe if you would want to go into that.
Yeah, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, cool. So I know that you worked with A Day to Remember. That's one of my favorite bands from my like 13 to 17-year-old phase. So I'm curious, do you maybe want to talk about, you said you went from doing post-production real hard to making records again. Like, what's that transition like? And then what is the transition to working with A Day to Remember from there?
Well, I mean, the transition from post-production to making records again was like, relatively like I quit my job, so I was like, okay, I got to go make some records. And I went and I saw shows and I went and talked to bands. I was in Chicago, so there's a college called Columbia where like all the artsy fartsy kids fucking go to college and shit. So, I had some friends that went to Columbia and I fucking asked them if, they knew any bands, and I recorded a couple projects out there. And, then my girlfriend broke up with me and I was like, I got to get the fuck out of Chicago. And I left Chicago, and that's when I moved to Steamboat and got the whole idea to start Make Believe, and when I started Make Believe, that dude that I called to take that job down in fucking Mississippi, Jeremy Deaton, was the first person that I called. I was like, hey, I'm going to go to Omaha and, open a recording studio. And he was like, oh, that's a terrible idea. I work for Claire Brothers out in Seattle now, and I definitely cannot be involved in any of this shit that you're talking about. I was like, okay, cool. Well, we just always talked about doing the whole opening a recording studio thing together when we were in college. So I'm letting you know, I'm going to Omaha and I'm opening a recording studio. And he's like, good to know, buddy. And, so I moved to Omaha and I start, recording people, and I'm recording people out of a house that I rented and stuff like that. And, I get a phone call from a girl that I know, and she just goes, hey, do you know a guy named Jeremy Deaton? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, he's at the Greyhound on Jackson Street. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, he was trying to get in touch with you. He didn't know how to get in touch with you. You weren't checking your, like, I don't know if this was like MySpace or Facebook back in the day. She's like, you weren't checking whatever. So he saw that we were friends and that I had a phone number listed. So he called my phone and he told me to call you. So I literally like went to the Greyhound on Jackson Street, and there was my fucking buddy from college without a cell phone. All he had was his fucking backpack and a skateboard. And, he still lives in Omaha. We started Make Believe together, and, he unfortunately has since moved on from the business to go be a wonderful father to his children, but I love him with all of my heart, and I never would have been able to do this without him. So, that's kind of really the transition of like getting out of post and then making it as serious as it is now. But I was recording records in between then, freelancing, renting out studios the same way that other people do. As far as the how do you end up going down there, Colin Britton, who produced that record, me and him share a manager, and he called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in going down to Florida?" And I said, "Sure." And I got along really well with the guys in the band, and we had a great time making that record. And I think it sounds really, really good, and people seem to like it. So that's all we can hope for, right?
Right. Um, so could you maybe take us back? One, if y'all haven't seen what Make Believe Studios looks like, I have his Instagram right underneath his name badge, and y'all need to go check it out. It is a beautiful facility. I'm talking amazing gear, like awesome look. The vibes, even just from the Instagram pictures, makes you want to go record there. You feel me? Um, and then
Thank you.
also, um, you were talking about um how you were still freelancing in between the times of you were working with post production and like picking up gigs and stuff. Could you maybe talk to us a little bit of how like being fluid and playing different roles potentially helped you to like stay afloat as well as open new opportunities to you, even if it wasn't always exactly what you
Yeah,
thought?
I feel like just being open to things has always helped me. I believe that if something's been done before, then it can be done, and it can be done by me. Am I the guy who's going to go build you a microwave? Maybe if we really need a motherfucking microwave. I know that people can build microwaves, guys. Like, they fucking exist. It can be done. I know that I could make you a rice cooker with two wires and a goddamn wooden pot. So it's like, you know, try and be that dude who is flexible. Um, has always been something that I've aspired to, but also it's one of those things where you've got to, you know, rein in exactly where you want to go, because it can end up being like an open, endless pile of shit journey through life. So, um, for me, it was, trying to figure out the best way to navigate through all of these skill sets that I can provide, or all these skill sets that I can do, and figure out what I actually like to do. It's like, yo, could I engineer trap music for like 28 hours a day? I can. I have. I will do it again if they pay me enough money to fucking do it. Um, but is that how I want to spend my days or live my life? At this point, no. I've got other things that I'd like to accomplish. And, having my name as the engineer or mixer for like the biggest record for a genre that I'm not super interested in anymore isn't like the biggest goal that I'm set out to accomplish. And I was talking to someone about it earlier. And, a little bit more about what I've got going on Killshot, but it's like when you change your sites from being, oh, I'd like to, be involved with like things like what the Lord Alge brothers or, Michael Brower and these great mix engineers are doing, to I'd like to, go after what Universal Audio and Focusrite and those worlds are doing, you know, focus changes. And for me, I'm blessed because, not to toot my own horn or talk shit about other people, but there's only a few of us now who are really looking at both sides of the game and continuing to try and make great records. So I feel like that puts me in an exciting and interesting position, because I get to try and design these tools and use that side of my brain, but then I turn around and I'm going to use them on a fucking record that day, that afternoon, as soon as I get them back.
Hmm. That's super amazing, and I'm sure that plays a big factor in like developing your workflow. It's like a controlled science experiment. You're playing with variables that you know kind of exactly what the outcome should be, and even if it's a surprise, it's like a controlled surprise. So I'm curious, could you maybe share with the audience a little bit what you have going on in the world of design and creation with
Yeah. So Make Believe has started a new plugin company with Metric Halo. So Metric Halo are coding plugins for us that we have designed in house, conceptually by me, and then graphics wise by our brother in arms Dan Thompson over at Make Believe New Media, which is our sister company. Dan does all of the GUI stuff, and then I really just kind of sit around and complain until I think it's good. But then also people who have experienced our plugins thus far, Make Believe as a concept for making audio tools, it's very, very stripped back. Some of it is stripped back for the point of just being incredibly easy. Some of it is stripped back to the point of forcing you to work in a way that I think is a little bit more creative. And I know that it's not right for everybody and that some people may want something different, but the people who have gravitated towards, the MBEQ in particular is what I'm talking about. You know, they they say it's fast and it sounds good, which is exactly what I intended to accomplish with it. And that's what it is for me. It's fast as hell and it sounds super good. And 9 times out of the 10, I can get exactly what I'm looking for out of that one equalizer because it can be both incredibly colored and incredibly clean. So, does that mean that it's like the end all be all for me as far as equalizers go? No, because I like other equalizers. I like other equalizers that look like other equalizers just because I'm so familiar with the way that their knobs work that I would like to turn their digital knob to work the way that the knob on my fucking console works. I will make my own versions of those and they will hopefully sound, you know, if not better, than just equally as good and different than other people who make those things. The big thing for me is like, why would I go and make another SSL plugin or another Poltec plugin when everybody in the goddamn world has already done that? The reason why is because my SSL and my Poltec have been modified. Almost everything in my life I've gotten tinkery with and weird with and spent a bunch of time trying to improve it because, for a long time, I thought if I could make all of this shit better, I'll be better. That is a fallacy, just in case anybody's wondering. There's not a fucking piece of gear out there that is going to make you fucking anybody. It's not going to get you closer. The only thing that it could do is inspire you or teach you, a way to work around something that leads you to a result that you've been hearing in your head, but the reason that you got there is because you couldn't do this, in an analog world the way that you typically do it in the box. And then at the end of the day, you also got to look at what you're wanting to accomplish. Because if you want to compete with Serban and shit like that, that doesn't involve a console in any way, shape, or form. So, um, for me, it's about making tools that I think are fun to use and sound great and are inspiring. Hopefully it's one of those things like take the parallel process plugins. People are using those things all over the place in places that, I didn't intend for them to be used, but they still sound great, on the lead vocal, on the two bus, when these things are made for guitars and snare drums and shit like that. But on the other side of it, I know people who are using them on their kicks and snare drums and their guitars, and they're saying, "Hey, I'm recording some of the best drums that I've ever fucking recorded, and all I'm doing is throwing your fucking plugin on it. Throwing a mic out there, putting this thing on the fucking snare drum, and I think that it sounds way better than anything I've ever done." And it's like, okay, that's really cool because now these people are more confident in their snare drum recording abilities, and sure, I think that one of those things that does make people more confident is like, yeah, would you be more confident if you had a Focusrite Octopre or if you had a goddamn rack of 1081s and fucking Bob fucking rocks EQ settings? Well, I'd be more confident with the other shit, clearly. But, for me, I know I can't give you that. So I figured out an easy way to just give you a little fucking slider, turn it on up, and feel fucking happy. Bob Rock settings are not in there, by the way, just so everybody knows.
Yo, Ryan Harvey says best EQ ever, and then our friend Daniel Maybone said, "I can't wait till they're out." Can you share with everybody what they're gonna get access to for being live in our audience tonight?
Well, we are going to post a code that is the demo. So this is a 30-day time demo of the first 5 plugins. They're still in their alpha stages, but I can tell you this right now, there is not too much that's going to change moving forward. A couple of them are graphics things, and then there's only a couple features that will be changing as far as the equalizer. None of them are going to change the sound. And we've had pretty great results as far as, the only person who actually gave me any side of a scare was you, Kill, when we had your computer, so right now I feel pretty good. And, if anybody does end up grabbing them, feel free to just shoot us a note if you have any issues with it. But, this is pretty much the first publicly available demo that, that exists. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're all
So
very thankful.
Daniel. Oh, I remember. Daniel's on Windows.
So that's the
Sorry.
other stipulation. You must have a Mac computer because they are coded to run on a Mac.
Yes, there will be Windows ports eventually. Metric Halo just has a lot going on right now. I'm also very, very happy to announce that those guys will be releasing the Mark IV versions of their interfaces, which just sound absolutely incredible here shortly. So, keep an eye out on their website. Watch out their spaces. They've got a thread on Gear Sluts that's like 200 pages long, called Metric Halo 3D is here. And that's a big meeting forum for all the things Metric Halo. But their new interfaces will be rolling out literally any day. So over the next week or so, I would just say watch it, see what happens. And with that, the make-believe stuff is on its way to get ready to you guys.
Yeah. So we're to the section of the show. We talk gear and plugin sauce. I know that you literally know everything about every piece of gear in existence, no exaggeration. So, do you maybe want to highlight some of your favorite pieces of gear and maybe some like super secret sauce techniques that's like the hey bro, don't tell anybody. You feel
Well,
me?
I mean, if I told you all the hey bro, don't tell anybody, people fucking get mad at me and call my phone and shit.
Alright, how about you give us one
Like
hey
I could
don't
tell
tell
you,
anybody.
I could tell you how to do Chris Lord Algae's mod to his 1176 that creates all that distortion that everybody talks about. But who would that piss off? Would that piss off Chris, Dave Kolka, or the guy who owns Blackline Audio?
Okay. How about this? We don't have to piss anybody off. Let's just talk some secret sauce.
Yeah, no. And I'm being facetious too. Like I really don't give a shit. None of this shit is precious to me, dude. So ask whatever you want.
Shoot. How about this? We'll do compressor, EQ, and reverb. Maybe a modulation plugin too.
What do you mean? Like my main go-tos or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, as far as like compressor go-tos, um, you know, I really, really are we talking about in the box or out of the box?
How about both? But you could start with either. Whatever you're most comfortable.
Well, it's like a big ass varied thing because like what am I going to use on a two bus is definitely different than what I'm going to use on the drums. And if it's 1984 up in this bitch, then it's going to be totally different as is, you know. So it would be more like, can I ask a favor if we're gonna do this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Narrow it down a little. Narrow it down a little bit for me. Say like, how would you treat a guitar for a fucking '90s song where I want it to sound like Nirvana or Stone Temple Pilots or some shit, or how would you treat an 808 on a fucking modern hip hop song? Like narrow down exactly what you're thinking, and I'll throw out what I think is cool. Also, if I slide over here, can you see me?
No, not so well.
Oh, cool.
I got the little graphic going for us.
Okay.
Y'all know what's going on.
Um, Sorry about that. But
Okay. So how about this? I'll throw out some gear, and you just kind of tell me what you would use it for.
oh yeah, we could do it backwards too, where you can say,
Okay.
"Oh, Fairchild," and I'd be like, "Oh, this is what a Fairchild's good for."
Boom. All right. We're gonna start with this. 1176.
Good God, everything. The 1176 is good. Is fucking good on everything. And little known trick that most people don't know this. I'll tell you this right now. Anything that's good on a fucking vocal is great on a bass, and anything that's good on a bass and a vocal is usually good on a kick and snare drum. The middle of your record is the middle of your record. If you need something to be put in place there, the boxes that do it tend to do it well.
All right. We're gonna continue down the same path. I'm gonna hit you a couple compressors. How about we'll switch it? How would you use a LA2A versus an 1176?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do and what sound you're trying to go after. So, like LA2As are very particular sounds for me. One, if you want like that '60s, not Paul McCartney bass, but what I would consider like American bass. Something like a Leonard Skinner record or some shit like that, where there's like this American late '60s, '70s up to the early '80s bass sound. That's the LA fucking 2A. I mean, there is no other way to get that. And it's because the LA 2A doesn't do like a super good job at bass. It kind of chops it off and makes it weird. But that is the sound of that. If I had an LA 2A in a studio and I was doing a record start to finish, the LA 2A, number one spot for me is hands down fucking mono room mic in front of a drum set, like vintage U67, vintage U87, mono mic into an LA2A on what they call full Canadian, which is where you just take both knobs and turn them all the way up and just use the console to blend that shit in. Full Canadian rules. And you will see that all over the place. Like, that is not a trick that I invented. It's a good one. It works extremely well. That being said, I've never really gotten along with the LA2A on a vocal in the analog domain. I actually have always hated it. But in the analog domain, I love an LA3A over an 1176. My main vocal limiter is an LA3A. It's sitting right next to me. But in the digital domain, my main vocal compressor outside of like some other shit, the last thing, I wouldn't say main, one of the last things in my chain is always the LA2A Silver from Universal Audio. I don't know what it is about that plugin, but it's special and I do like it. I will say that I never let it do more than a decibel of gain reduction because it sounds like shit if it does that. But that 0 to 1 dB and makeup gain amplifier in that plugin is great.
Alrighty, I see you. I see you. How about we move over to like EQs? If you're gonna use a Poltec, what is your goal with that?
It depends on if I'm trying to make something brighter or something darker. A lot of people don't utilize the Poltec for this, but the Poltec, like making things darker with the Poltec, is like the classiest way to make something darker ever in the world. So it's like if you gotta like boost the shit out of your guitars to like get them to fit in the mix a little bit, and you can fucking go and put like your Poltec on 20K or 10K and attenuate that a little bit to like blend in that top end to get it to fit exactly perfect. Oh, good God, they rule. I use Poltecs all over the place. In the box, I use them across my two mix. I've got no shame in saying that. I've got a pair of Poltecs. Well, I've got a Poltec plugin setting that I like very much that I use in the box. I've got two vintage Poltecs that are utilize all the time for tracking. And they pretty much live on my kick and snare drum in my main studio. So like those two vintage Poltecs are on the kick and snare drums. And then I've got another Poltec that my Kemper goes through, and that thing just fucking rules. I mean, you want your Kemper to be even fucking cooler? Run it through a goddamn Poltec, Ryan. Telling you right now. So yeah, Poltecs rule, but they really, I mean, they could be used everywhere, dude. But yeah, for me, it really depends on the vibe. Like if I'm doing a jazz record, Poltec 12K, 16K on a jazz record lead soloist, whether it's a fucking vocal or a fucking saxophone, there's the air where it sounds like Rudy Van Gelder is hanging out in the room with you sort of vibe. They're great. Yeah, they can be used in a lot of places. But I would say like main places, kick and snare and guitars and lead vocal, and then in the mix, two bus for sure. The other place that I will use them in the mix, like I've got some tricks that I've come up with, and I didn't come up with these tricks. They've been passed down through other people. So like Bob Clearmountain, when he recorded, he would record his overheads with AKG 460s, and he'd run those into Poltecs. 460s are dark. They're way darker than 451s, but then you can dial in the top end and get it real fine tuned with your motherfucking Poltecs. That's also a Bob Rock trick. Bob Rock learned that from watching Bob Clearmountain when he recorded Bryan Adams up in fucking Vancouver. Bob Rock learned it. He started doing it as well. I do it. If someone's like a fucking cymbal basher and they're out there, I will definitely use darker microphones and then warm those motherfuckers up with Poltecs to like get that nice balance of hash when it comes to the high end. I don't particularly like 460s because I think they're little dark ass laser beams. I personally like the AKG 414B ULS, which is the darkest 414 that was ever created. Your mileage may vary, but taking something that's supposed to be bright and putting it into a dark ass microphone and then making that shit bright again with Poltecs, that's always nice.
You're dropping all the sauce. There's like a big slippery puddle of sauce on the floor right now.
Hey, I hope I can help someone. And I've got time. I do have to like roll over here for a second, but I'm here. Just keep asking me any questions you want.
Cool. All right, so check it. I'm curious. A Poltec versatile EQ. We could say the same thing, something like Fab Filter, right? So what about the inverse, like a mastering style EQ? Maybe like an Amec or like a very massive passive. I'm sorry. Which application would you apply this in? Obviously a two bus, but
okay. Well, one that AMEC EQ is not real. The AMEC E200 or whatever the fuck they're calling it. More power to Dirk and those guys over there because they're killing it. They acquired the rights to AMEC and they came out with that plugin. That plugin is clearly based on a GML 9500 and a Sontec 432, which is totally fine. They say it in their shit, in their own advertising. I'm all good with that, but AMEC, they didn't make that equalizer in the real world, but they did make a great, mastering style equalizer that was designed by Rupert Neve called the Medici. And that is a really, really cool equalizer if you ever come across one. They're still relatively inexpensive for what they are, which is like a cool Neve mastering equalizer. Where would I utilize those things? all over the goddamn place, and most people think like, oh, a Soundtech style equalizer is just for mastering, where I'm pretty close with Burgess and I'm biased when it comes to all this shit. But, how many people in the history of man have utilized a GML 8200 to use on kick drums, snare drums, lead vocals when tracking as like a great parametric equalizer? I know hundreds of songs that were recorded kicks and snares through a GML. I know a few producers in LA who still have that rig set up. If you go look right now, a Soundtech 250EX is $3,100, where a GML 200 is going to run you $6,700. So for half the price, you can get a great studio equalizer. I'll say this, at the end of the day, do they sound different? Yes. What it really comes down to is they're just parametric biquad equalizers with different amplifiers, and they will all sound different. You've got to find the one that's, works great for you. And when you're on something like the kick and snare drum, you don't have to be as precious as if you're using it in a mastering situation. Like, you are going to be, boosting and cutting 10 dB, 12 dB in a tracking sort of situation, where in a mastering situation, you're never really doing that. You know what I mean? So it really comes down to the overall box tone of the thing more than, say, what you get out of it, which is just a great equalizer. And that's kind of the same concept that, if you go back to the MBEQ, is like, there's a clean equalizer and there's an equalizer with a lot of tone in there. And at the end of the day, it's just a great equalizer, and you can grab the knobs and pull them around however you want. You don't have to really be too fucked up about what it is or how much money you spent on it, because there's a lot of things that get weird. It's like, you make a great equalizer plugin, and just because you want it to look like a mastering equalizer, you're going to be charging people more money for it. It's it's a weird thing to me, in my opinion. But in my mind, what it comes down to is that any equalizer can be recreated with a great digital equalizer. Like, the difference between a 10 and harmonic distortion aside, but the difference between the curves of a 1073 or a Poltec and something like a standard biquad filter is that you may have to get a secondary band involved to make one of those bands wider. Or in the sense of a Neve, there's a lot of overshoot and undershoot. So when you go and you boost up the shit out of a goddamn top bell, like the 10K bell on a Neve, you need to actually cut, roughly 9.7 to 9.9K right before it, so that it creates an undershoot that happens when that bell happens. And those are the sounds that make a Neve sound like a Neve. Undershoot and overshoot is inherent in a ton of his designs. So once you learn those things, like, you can massage a digital equalizer to get you to where you want to go. But on the other side of it, it's like, doesn't it feel great to just turn one of those Neve knobs and have it sound real fucking tight? So I understand why am going to make those things, because I want that same experience. Like, there's something to be said about turning the low band on a fucking SSL or turning the low band on an API. They feel different. They sound different. And if you have the opportunity to spend with that gear, you're going to start to, come up with your own tastes and the things that you like. And, sometimes you're going to be like, dude, when I turn up the fucking low end of my fucking API, it sounds fucking punchy and great. But other times I can turn it up like 12 dB and I feel like nothing ever fucking happens. And sometimes on your fucking, you can be like, every time I turn up the low end on my Neve, I feel like it's flabby and shitty. And then on those times when you fucking feel like nothing happens when you turn up your API, 9 times out of 10, you plug in your motherfucking Neve and you turn up that low band and you're like, yeah, this thing's fucking thick, bro. So it really just comes down to taste, I guess.
I think that was a great explanation, and you really gave some insight with explaining. Once you understand what the knobs are doing, you can recreate that with a digital EQ like, fairly easy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love something like Pro Q3 or the make believe EQ, because I can really shape things the way I want, and I can not only like hear that it's sounding how I want, I can see the shapes that I'm drawing. Like I call it the sexy curves. We like sexy curves on our EQs.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that the whole concept of mixing with a zero crossing line is one that hasn't been fully explored yet. And as things continue to progress, you know, that whole concept of drawing sexy curves that you got going on there, I think that's going to become more and more special. You know.
Most definitely. I want to move on to Reverb, whether hardware or plugins, and then we're gonna move into the Q&A section of the night. We already got some people asking some questions. Just want y'all to know I'm gonna go back to your questions, so feel free to start asking them now. I'm gonna go in order of the chat. If you're fucking with the stream, you're enjoying this, please follow. Make sure that you share it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, support the stream, and we appreciate everybody for being here. Rick, tell us, Reverb, what are you doing, bro? What's the secrets?
I mean, I don't really have too many secrets that other people don't have. 480L
Or
is
so you
hands down.
think?
The 480L is hands down like my favorite fucking vocal reverb. I love that thing, and I think that everybody's got access to like tons of different shit nowadays, and I think that that is still entirely valid. That you can go and try everything, but I've always stressed that you should go and find like a set of tools and learn them in and out. And for me that was the Lexicon 480L, and I did it in the hardware world. And now I utilize the Relab version of the Lexicon 480L as my favorite one. I think it sounds better than the UAD one. But, you know, what it comes down to is like, I know the differences in and out of that box. I know all of the things that make up that box. I know all of the things that make up its patches. I know all of the things that make up its presets. You guys want to you want an expert class on fucking reverb? Like, you really want to become like big dick daddies of reverb? Go and grab the Lexicon 480L manual, which has all of the settings for the presets in there, and then just go grab the Relab plugin and recreate the presets from the manual. And don't get me wrong, they're already programmed in there for you. You could go through each preset and just listen to them, but that's not what I'm telling you to do. I'm saying go recreate them from the manual, because you'll learn the only difference between, hall plus stage and medium hall is fucking there's 6 delay taps in a 480L, and they utilize 2 delay taps to give a distinct reverb that is that reflection that you pick up as the stage. I'll say this: someone who utilized the shit out of those medium hall and large hall plus stage presets was goddamn fucking Al Schmidt. So if you want to try and get a reverb like his that's not his but different, you can go in there and then learn how to go in and make your own reverb. And really, you could take any reverb and then make it a plus stage if you put in those 2 delay taps. So, yes, I absolutely suggest, and I don't care which one it is, whether it's fucking Vintage Verb or Valhalla or fucking, Valhalla is Vintage Verb, but I mean, whether it's Vintage Verb or like fucking Room or, whether it's, R2, whatever, I don't care. Like, find what it is and then go in and study the shit out of it. And then on the opposite side of it, one thing that I do to study all reverbs is, and I do it with the 480L presets, but like if you go through the plugins that I think are serious contenders to be like future reverbs in my box, I make 480L presets in all of them. So I've got 480L presets inside of rooms. I got 480L presets inside of fucking Valhalla Vintage Verb. I've got 480L presets inside of HD Cart from Sonic Foundry or whoever made that plugin, which is a great reverb, by the way. You know,
Mm.
and I'm not talking like presets, like two of them. I'm talking like every preset that was ever in a 480 that could be recreated without having the special effects program. Thanks. So, it just allows me to learn how those fucking reverbs really, really work because they do interact differently. They'll have different controls, how they will go about doing things. It may be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, none of these people are like inventing totally new shit, you know? So you'll figure it out.
That's awesome. That's really some of the best advice I've ever heard somebody give on how to like learn about reverb, you know? So many people, including myself, overlook reading the manual. I'm like, "Oh man, fuck that shit." Whoop, right to the
Oh,
side.
I mean, yo, I'll be honest. The 480L. I mean, when that thing came out, that thing was like $118,000, dude. That manual
Wow.
is an expert class in reverb. And to be real, if you never read anything else again ever about reverb, that's all you need to know. That manual.
Wow. You're giving us the secret sauce. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the comments. If anybody wants to start asking some questions, I'm gonna even go back and start asking some people kind of asked earlier for you, Rick. Um, let's see. Mm-hmm. The first one is um Black Rooster compressors. Do you use any Black Rooster audio plugins?
I do not use any of their stuff. I checked it out and not trying to talk shit, but I got the vibe that, those were very juicy. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't know if you know what I mean by that, but Juice is an audio framework which is used to design DSP plugins. And there's a lot of things that have been put on websites like GitHub and stuff where they're pretty much just standard repositories for how a compressor or how an equalizer could be made. And then people will download them and then just put their own skins on top of them. Um,
Hmm.
and, when I see a company show up overnight and they've got 39 plugins for sale, I just get a little bit weirded out.
I can understand. Um, the next plugin we have for you comes from DJ Umair. It says, "What's a free plugin you use on your mixes?"
Ooh, a free plugin that I use on my mixes. Um, I really so like these are dope plugins that like I try and tell people about just because I don't think that there's tools that do it better or are even close to doing it better. The number one dopest, freest tool where there's not anything else in the world that comes close to doing a better job than this does is DJ Filter from Xfer. Have you ever utilized that?
I haven't, but Xfer is the people who make OTT.
Yeah, so they make OTT and they make Serum. So DJ Filter was one of their first plugins, and it's a free plugin, and it goes one way and it goes the other way. And if you grab it and you go this way, then it rolls off all the low end and filters it like you're at the club, and fucking it's got nothing but high end coming through the speakers. And if you
Mm-hmm.
go the other way, then it does the opposite, where fucking the low end is there and all the high end's gone. But like
Mm.
those moves with a goddamn normal equalizer are like 3 or 4 moves, to actually make that pulled off that way, like
Mm-hmm.
what a DJ would do with their mixer. Where on DJ Filter, it's just like, nah, it's tight. So definitely, I got to give it up to DJ Filter. That's a great plugin.
That's
Um,
amazing.
I can definitely keep going on the free plugin tip because there are a lot of great free tools that are out there, but DJ Filter is great. Also, if you don't have it, the Soft Tube Saturation is a great plugin that they put out for free. Everyone should have that.
Awesome. People say in the comments, keep going, please. I don't have any more questions yet, so why don't we talk free plugins? What's some more stuff that you'd be using, um, to
As far as stuff that I utilize in the free world,
If you're not utilizing it currently, maybe you could talk about things you used when you were trying to find your way or the money to get the real stuff you wanted.
no, absolutely. And I've just got to go back and think because there's some stuff that I still utilize by dudes, and I just don't know exactly how free it is because I own these things now. So like I think
Mm.
they may be like free to use until you buy them, but like I bought them like so long ago. Like all the Macy plugins, like I don't remember what the deal is, but for some reason I want to believe that those were free. If not, it was just Tapehead was free. But Macy
Mm.
makes great shit, and I definitely still utilize Tapehead, and I definitely still utilize L 2007, not as a master limiter anymore, but you can distort the shit out of that thing in interesting ways. So it sounds real cool. You know, just trying to think of like particularly actually free plugins. Um, I try and buy the plugins that I utilize. So let me go just look at my Pro Tools
Um,
list.
while you do a little bit of looking, I have a new question for you. What
Yeah.
genres do you think will be chart topping in 5 years?
Okay, so I've actually had to do like an interesting thought analysis. I think we're coming to the end of the 80s, my friends. Um, and what I mean by that is that, for really the past 20 years, and it's, don't get me wrong, the early 2000s had a little bit of runoff where you still had people who were making records that were like real records and actually making it to the charts. But really for the past 20 years we've been in very heavily programmed, heavily for on the floor, heavily to the grid music, you know and grunge came through and absolutely killed that. And we had it in both sides. We had synth and new wave and 80s pop and disco and all that shit, which was all super straight to the fucking grid. And then that continued on with the slick sounds of things like hair metal and shit like that. And then when grunge came and people were playing all fucked up and weird and smashing shit and stuff, it completely changed music for, roughly 10 years, maybe 14-ish years, and now then we went back into a cycle where it was the 80s again. And now I think we're coming to the end of the 80s. I think people want to hear punk rock. They want to hear fucking people smashing guitars. I think that's why fucking MGK has a goddamn, career with Travis Barker and not a hip hop career. But even then, it's one of those things where like, that shit that he made is very to the grid, very, very fucking edited. Travis is just like that in general. He plays like that. So, I think it's moving past that, dude. People want to get weird. They want to listen to Mac DeMarco and fucking weird ass shit.
I love that perspective. That's very interesting, and I definitely see how that could make that shift very easily. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we end up with the next Radiohead out here where there's this young band that comes through and like throws enough intelligence at it, like people will follow and then we'll be on a wave, you know?
Most definitely. Our next question says, "Yo, why does MBEQ sound way better than other EQs?" Then they have a follow-up question, like, "Why is there less smearing, less ringing, and more solidity?"
Oh man, I'd love to know who asked that question, but you know, all I can say is because we listened. When it came to listening to other equalizers, I didn't give a shit. Like people get real fucked up about like weird ass shit on the internet, like cramping or crumping or whatever the fuck this shit is that people talk about in these fucking, look at my equalizer fucking forms. I don't care about any of that shit. All I cared about was how the thing sounded. And if I listened to it and I thought something sounded like shit, I had no problem saying it. And some of these things are to normal people probably like not things that sound like shit, just the inherent intrinsic abilities of where they end up after where they fucking started. Where for me, it's like, no, that sounds like shit. if I go and I use a super tight notch, on most equalizers, those super tight notches make ringing like you pull down 4K and 3K is ringing like a turd. You pull down 3K and 2.2K rings like an asshole. For me, it was like, why? Why does this happen? And I have found equalizers that don't inherently do that when I notch the shit out of them. And what it comes down to is like it is Q and it's how it treats it and it's how it cuts as it goes down. So you learn these little things and you apply it to what you're trying to do until it doesn't do those things that you all fucking hate. And I can't remember what they said, where they said like less ringing and they said it was solid. I don't remember that exact quote, but it was a great one. But it sounds solid because I didn't want it to fold over, and there's like a lot of equalizers that fold over, not only in the low end but in the top end. In the low end, they just kind of shit and they fart out, where in the top end they start sounding splatty and fucking shitty. And smeary, where the transient details just all fucked. And you can hear that like clear as day. You can hear like you like want to hear like a really easy to hear bad version of like how bad shit can sound. It's like, just go take the same signal and fucking put an equalizer on it and see if it fucks it all up before you fucking do anything. And like, a lot of equalizers that are out there, they do like, and I'm not trying to talk shit about what they're doing because clearly people love them and they fucking make great music with them, and then that's totally fine. Any Poltec or any fucking Neve that you want to run your shit through is going to change a signal way less than a digital equalizer is going to. But that doesn't mean that your digital equalizer doesn't change the fucking signal. It absolutely does. So you've got to know what you're getting into, and we paid attention to what we were getting into.
Most definitely. I think that's like ding 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 ding. You couldn't have hit the nail on the head any better with it. Have you? I have one more question, and then I'm gonna put a last call for questions. And then we'll go back to free plugins before we close out the show.
Okay.
This question comes from Daniel Maybone. It says, when you track stuff you're not going to mix, how do you normally approach that?
Just make sure shit is labeled well, but it really depends on who you're with and what you're doing. So like a recent project that I tracked wouldn't be the way that I typically track a project, because they wanted as many options as possible when it came to the mix. So, they wanted the ability to fucking turn up and down every guitar microphone and shit like that. So if you're multi-micing 2 cabinets and you end up with 4 microphones on a guitar sound, then they wanted the ability to turn all those up and down later. So that means that I recorded those as 4 separate tracks inside of Pro Tools, where typically I would sum those all down through a bus on the API and then just record that bus, and have my DI in my one guitar track. Well, it didn't go that way, and it didn't really matter at the end of the day because I ended up mixing the project with them, and I just summed that shit down to the SSL on one fucking channel and printed that shit. So it went away anyway. So you really got to figure out like who it is and what you're doing. Like, I'll say this. I've learned some really, really good shit that I do stick to. Don't ever, and this is, speaking in fucking goddamn absolutes is wrong. So take that as advice. There's more than one way to skin a cat. I do not ever equalize a vocal when I'm tracking. Ever. And the reason why is because fucking, and it comes from Bruce Swedin, it's impossible to punch in that vocal now. You want to use a little bit of a fucking limiter, that's fine. You got like your most favorite 1176, that's cool. If your attack and release times are a little bit off, people aren't going to really fucking know. If your high end is different from one word to the next, they're going to know instantly every time.
That's some super solid advice. And, you know, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people who are young tracking engineers making is like they think they get an Apollo and now they're going to UAD record everything through Apollo into their Pro Tools session. Like, although that is great, you could UAD monitor and put all those same plugins in your session and achieve literally the exact same sound with nothing in permanence. And at least then you have options, you know?
Absolutely, and UAD record is a little bit easier because you can at least save a copy of those settings and then go fucking pull that shit up and then record another vocal through it, but where it gets weird is like, say they've got to punch in a word and they're not with your UAD rig and they're on the other side of the world recording into a Focusrite. Well, now that one word is fucking weird and you've got to have a whole chain set up to try and go after, fixing that one fucking word. Where if you would have recorded that vocal with no EQ and then they recorded that vocal with no EQ and you threw them into your vocal chain in the box, like you may have to automate like one band of an equalizer, a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. Besides that, they're usually the fucking same. So, it's wild, and certain shit, you got to go after certain shit. Like, if I'm not mixing your fucking jazz record, then I'm not going to go after it in the same way that I would be if I am mixing your jazz record. I'm going to try and record this as cleanly as possible with the best sounds of open microphones. If I'm mixing the jazz record, then we're just going to record it mixed. It's going to be recorded that way. And we're going to do like final balance and add a little bit of reverb to some shit. And that's the mix, So it really depends on who you're working for, what you're doing. People want different shit, and if you're the producer, then you get to really make that call and you get to eat the bad decisions. If you're the engineer, I'll say this: watch your fucking ass. Being the guy who can solve problems is way better than being the guy who fucking causes problems. So if you fucking get your dick hard about your fucking equalizer and you fucking, now can't punch in a vocal 3 months later, well, you fucked yourself, bro. That's all I'll say.
That's a gem. Here, I'm going to cue the sound effects.
Damn, son.
No sound effects. Wow.
Facts. Look, this is what we're gonna do. I want you to talk some more about some free plugins, and then we're gonna finish out the show, letting everybody know how they can get their free 30-day alpha of the Metric Halo bundle.
Okay. Let me see. Sorry, Oh, I forgot about that. Camel Crusher, dude, is rad.
Who makes that, and what is the purpose behind it?
Camel Crusher is a distortion plugin, and I can't remember who makes it now, but it used to be made by Camel Audio. I know that Camel Audio at some point was actually purchased by Apple, but Camel Crusher is the sound of EDM records. Like, whenever you listen to fucking Skrillex and you're like, how the fuck did he get that shit to hit so hard? Camel Crusher.
Interesting.
It fucking rules. I'm looking at this website as far as like best free plugins, and I'm going through the shit that I actually fucking do use. So there's one on here this is actually not a plugin, and this is more for like sound design. But I will say that I've loved this fucking thing. Have you guys ever heard of Pulse Stretch?
Can't say I have.
Pulse Stretch is a piece of software where you like put in a piece of audio and it will like stretch it super long and then add octaves and weird tonal shit to it, and like it'll take any piece of music and then make it into like a Brian Eno-esque fucking composition, you know? And I'll say this, it's vibey as fuck to take the bridge of songs and throw them into Paul stretch and do like 3 or 4 different tonal variations of it, and then pull them back into your session and then ride them up like they're weird reverbs. You're welcome.
Amazing.
And Paul stretch can actually be found built into Audacity now. So there's a version of Paul stretch that's been built into Audacity. So if you have Audacity, you have access to Paul stretch.
That is awesome.
Soft tube saturation knob, we already talked about that. I don't use granulator. I don't use whatever the fuck this is. Don't use Rough Rider. That is, audio damage. That's their version of like Vocal Rider. It's all right. And I don't use Supermassive because I think that it sounds just kind of fucking wonky to me. Let me see. There were another couple companies, the Macy stuff. There was another company called Schwa Plugins. CHWA. Schwa Plugins. And they had a sister company called Stillwell Audio. And yep, it seems like they're still supporting this shit. And I actually tried before, like we started working with Metric Halo, I actually reached out to this Stillwell dude to see if he would be interested in fucking making some plugins with me. And he was not interested in doing that. It seems like he has, moved on from this shit. But I'll say this. He made a plugin called Bitter, which is one of the only true 24-bit meters. So this will allow you to see how many bits your audio utilizes in real time. That thing is fucking awesome, and you'll get like a lot of fucking what I would consider fake 24-bit files, especially when it comes to mastering. So you'll get sent over these 24-bit files, and then when you go actually look at them in Bitter, they'll just be 16-bit files that are sent as 24-bit files, so they won't play anything over 16 bits. And knowing that will help you get a better product when it comes to actually mastering, because you won't be relying on the headroom that should live in the additional bit depth. Then also, I mean, dude, really, they made some fucking really great plugins. The Stillwell dudes, I'm just looking through my plugins folder shit right now. So they made a plugin called The Rocket, which was like an 1176 on steroids. They made a plugin called Transient Monster, which was like a hard clipper, and this thing was a hard clipper way before, any of the fucking K-Clip or any of that shit existed. They made a plugin called Bad Bus Mojo, which was pretty much like nonlinear summing. And then they, had like a 1073 style plugin. Major Tom was like a 160 style plugin. The CMX was a microshift plugin. And then another one to talk about is Verbiage, which is, little known. Maybe Ryan will know about this one. But Verbiage has been utilized by Nolly on his snare drum for years. That's like Nolly get from all those Get Good drums sounds, fucking, yeah.
It's so funny. Ryan's in the comments. He said, "Yo, Reaper, Schwa does all the Reaper stuff now." And then you were naming the plugins, and as you said it, he's like, "The Rocket, the Glue."
Yeah,
awesome.
I'll say this. I think Schwa and Stillwell were 2 separate fucking people. And I'll say this, that the Schwa plugins were not as good as the Stillwell plugins.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's weird because if you Google Schwa plugins, they don't exist. Like, it just takes you to Stillwell. Oh, hold on. either way, I hope it's that same guy. He made good stuff.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna give everybody in the audience, we got some new viewers here. I'm gonna give everybody a chance to ask any more questions if they got them. And then for the metric halo codes, this is my plan. This live stream is going to be available over on my YouTube channel tomorrow. So what will happen is I will put a link for the download plus a link or the access code you need to install it in the description of the YouTube video from this stream tomorrow. I'll repost it on my social media and y'all will be able to go find that. If you're here live, you're getting exclusive access and knowledge to this because nobody's going to know that this YouTube video has the link. And I appreciate everybody who's been here so far.
Yes, and Kill, I just sent that to you, so it'll be a link to the fucking the download. It'll be a link to our temporary video explaining how the equalizer works, and then it'll be the Ilok code. So, and we will keep this code exclusively on Killshot's page until we go live with it, which hopefully will be within the next 30 days. So,
that's amazing. We're very grateful, Rick. Thank you for allowing us to host this, We're also happy to have such a badass plugin company as like a backing, and for us to help in any way we can to promote the brand. I absolutely love the plugins. Good Math is on all my 2 buses. The EQ has the sauce, and you had the sauce all night, so no surprise, the sauce makes it just that much better. And the parallels are just one of those tools. You don't have to think much about using them. You put them on there, and if it creates the sound you like, you keep it. And if it doesn't, you take it off, It's
absolutely, just relatively simple, easy to use tools. And moving forward, there will be stuff that every plugin manufacturer is doing. We're going to definitely go after some modeling of some stuff that doesn't exist in the world, the way we want it to be done. But I thought this was a great place to start. How can you make great digital audio tools if you can't make a great digital equalizer?
That's facts. Rick, I can't thank you enough, buddy. Everybody, give us a round of applause. Doing the sound effects.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. And if there's anything that I can do, please just say the word.
Anytime, Rick. You're always welcome. We hope to have you back soon. Everybody in the chat, if you can't see it, is saying thank you so much. This was highly informative. For you to know, Rick, this is actually my highest streamed episode so far. We've had over 10 people in our chat the entire time. So that's amazing.
Really, everybody came to kick it.
Everybody came. You already know.
You're gonna have to send me a link of where I could go watch this and share it, and then read the chat as it went down. Because I've been over here Google and shit to talk about with you guys.
Most definitely, I'll hook you up with that, Rick. I hope that you have a great night, buddy. And thank you so much, the audience. Thank y'all for joining.
Thank you again, and everybody have a wonderful night.
Talk to you later, buddy.
Talk to you later.
Peace. Alrighty, y'all. This has been episode 6 of Knowledge That Kills. Make sure next week you tune in, because we got another very special guest for episode 7 of Knowledge That Kills. I have not gotten a confirmation yet, but we are supposed to have Jess Jackson, the co-owner of Antara's Auto Tune, coming on episode 7 of Knowledge That Kills. He is a multi-platinum mix engineer. He's done a lot of music for Pop Smoke and many other artists. It would be awesome if y'all follow the channel. If y'all could subscribe It would show a lot of support, help out the stream, you know. We've got this out the mud. We've been going 6 weeks strong. We're going to be turning this into the YouTube series. You'll be able to get all y'all's make-believe plugins tomorrow. So make sure that you tune in. Instagram's going to be the best way to see when that goes live. And I want to thank y'all again. Hope everybody has a blessed night. You have been watching Knowledge That Kills.
I'm out of there. I'm gone.
Peace.